What's up, guys? We are back again for chapter 11 of our book. I have my reading buddy here, Riley, the reading lizard. He's technically a dragon, is what I like to call him, because he's a bearded dragon. So we call him a dragon around here. But we're jumping into our chapter 11, so make sure you are in a cozy spot. You have everything you need. And you know what page we're on. That'll be a good starter, okay? So let's go into chapter 11. Eddie awoke to the sound of squishers talking. One was the principal. The other one had an odd, husky voice, somewhere between a purr and a growl. Rubbing his face, Eddie joined Aunt Min at their lookout spot in the tray. Is that her? Miss Vish? Min nodded. The squishers were standing on the storytime carpet. Miss Vish was facing the desk, allowing Eddie and Min to see her clearly. She was tall and thin and wore tiny metal-rimmed glasses that reflected the light. She was also surprisingly colorless. Her skin, her hair, even her clothing had washed-out quality. What a large room, she said softly, and so much glass. She pointed at the skylights, then gestured at the expanse of the windows. Oh, yes, said the principal proudly. We're lucky to have such a great library. Everyone loves looking at the forest. We watch it change through the seasons. Why, it's almost like being out. I was thinking of the cost, Mr. Steedman, said Miss Vish. The what? Cost? It costs a fortune to keep a room this size heated, especially with all these windows. We have such long cold winters, don't we? Have you thought about the cost? Oh, said the principal, surprised. Well, I hadn't really, and yet, even though it's such a large room, it's so crowded. Miss Vish moved soundlessly toward the shelves. All these dusty old books. She plucked one out and blew on it. Who takes care of the dust, Mr. Steedman? Plenty of people are allergic to dust. Me, for instance. I certainly can't be expected to do any dusting. She held the book out for him to see. No, of course not. Mr. Steedman sounded a little rattled. We have an excellent maintenance crew. Mr. Iverson cleans every morning. I will ask him to be more thorough with the dusting. Taking the book from her, he put it back on the shelf where it belonged. And actually, Miss Vish, they aren't all old books. Not at all. Mrs. Laurel went a great trouble to find the best new books that... Oh, you don't have to tell me about Mrs. Laurel. Miss Vish waved a long, thin hand. I know all about Miss Laurel and her fondness for new books. You do? Oh, yes. Have you had a close look at these books, Mr. Steedman? Many of them. Well, I don't mean to criticize, but the word rubbish comes to mind. I want you guys to think about how she's talking about the library and talking about the past librarian. Is she happy to be in the place she's in? Think about that. Rubbish, the principal sounded astonished. See for yourself. She pointed at the shelves. I can already tell you. Series books, storybooks, books with nothing but pictures, books that are actually called nonsense verse. Violent, frightening books filled with vampires and wizards, comic books, joke books, magic books, even love stories. Need I go on? Oh dear, said the principal. Not to mention the money that's gone into those tablets. If the children want to use tablets, Mr. Steedman, surely their parents can purchase them at home. If that is, they're so foolish as to entrust expensive electronic equipment to a child. Well, can we do better here? Or we can do better here, I'm sure, purred Mrs. Vish. We can have a more compact collection of books and equipment, more appropriate. I'll be glad to weed things out. I see, said the principal, who didn't seem to see at all. He opened his mouth to say more, but just then Mrs. Vish tripped over the storytime chair. It was only a small trip, but just a stumble, and she righted herself immediately. But her reaction was huge. She kicked the storytime chair. Min gasped. See what I mean, said Miss Fish. Overcrowded. How many children have tripped on this chair, Mr. Steedman? Well, none that I know of, but it's a safety hazard. We can certainly clear that out. Really? But Miss Laurel did her best, I'm sure, said Miss Fish. But her mind was obviously on other things. Now that she's gone, we can make some sensible changes. Changes? The principal looked around in confusion. But surely that would cost money? Oh, Mr. Steedman, I agree. We do not want to waste money. There has been far too much money wasted here already. It's everywhere you look. Here, for instance. Striding over to the comfy couch, she kicked that too. Not hard, but men gasped anyway. A couch? Said Miss Fish in the same tone of voice she might have used to say, a rat? Mr. Stevens stared at it in confusion. Well, yes, a couch. Is this meant to be a living room, Mr. Steeman? I mean, what is the point of overstuffed couch in a school? And the cushions? The stuffed animals? Are we in a bedroom? She picked up a plush bear. Well, actually, that's Winnie the Pooh. He's a puppet, said the principal. Most of these stuffed animals are story puppets, for I know what they are, said Miss Fish. I also know what they cost. Times are hard. Times are tough. These children might as well learn that right from the start. Yes, but I'm sure you agree that they need to learn about the value of money. They also need to learn about the value of hard work. Mr. Steedman, no one has ever made money by reading a book. Well, perhaps not immediately, said the principal, but study shows children who read regularly study schmutty, said Miss Fish. If you just... Suddenly she froze. Her body went stiff. Stay where you are, she hissed at the principal. Moving extremely slowly, she sidled, crab-like, toward the graphic novel display. With a stealth that made her almost invisible, she reached for a book, slowly raised it above her head. Crash! The book came smashing down on a small table. Fly, said Miss Fish calmly. Turning the book over, she examined the cover with satisfaction. At least it used to be a fly. Oh, cried Min. Oh, did you see that, Eddie? Did you see what that monster did? Shh, Aunt Min, she'll hear. But Miss Fish, having tossed the graphic novel back into its rack, with the dead fly still attached, was once again focused on Mr. Steedman. Where were we? Oh, yes, changes. The principal, who had been pulling at his collar, took this opportunity to speak up. Now, Miss Fish, I do see your point. It's just that, well, our students are really fond of this library. Many say it's their favorite place in school. Miss Laurel felt that only the most interesting, said Miss Fish. Interesting? You're the principal, Mr. Steeman. You should be thinking about what's good for students, not what's interesting. Do you think I ever did anything interesting as a child? Well, I couldn't say, said the principal. Perhaps not. Never, said Miss Fish. My parents knew what was good for me. Drills, Mr. Steeman. They drilled my brother and me. Yes, every day. Multiplication tables, spelling, capitals, cities, and look at us now. Oh, indeed, said the principal. Indeed. Well, then, good. Miss Fish clasped her hands together tightly and rocked slightly on her heels. Excellent. We understand each other. The principal didn't have much hair, but what he did have was standing up oddly on his head. I don't quite, well, let me say. Anyway, welcome to Ferny Creek Elementary, Miss Fish. It's good of you to come at short notice. My pleasure, said Miss Fish. My brother asked me weeks ago. He did? Oh, well, I suppose. Yes, of course. The library door went kabang as Miss Fish and Mr. Steedman left the room. It was a full minute before Eddie or Min could speak. Oh my gosh, said Eddie finally. She's awful. Ghastly, said Min, still trembling from the death of the fly. She's the most vicious squisher I've ever seen. A visher, said Eddie. Exactly, said Min, a visher. But Eddie was still struggling to understand. She wants to change everything. How can that happen? Won't the other squishers stop her? The principal tried to argue. You heard him, Eddie. He was like a cricket facing a praying mantis. A mantis, said Eddie. Yes, that's what she's like. Tall and thin and scary. Min shuddered. A mantis uses camouflage to hide itself. Did you notice that about her? She has no more color than a moth. She's stealthy, too, said Eddie, just like a mantis. We'll have to be very, very careful, whispered Aunt Min. All right, guys, come back for chapter 12.